So we got your rejection therapy videos. I think almost everyone here submitted both a success and a fail. If you guys want to see some of them, they're rotating on video outside. But we're going to go through a couple of especially painful and awesome videos during the lunch session where I'll be facilitating the videos. We might even do it in slow-mo so you can watch the pain as it's happening. How many of you guys found that you were surprisingly, like, you enjoyed this, the whole rejection therapy thing? Yeah. How many felt like it got easier as you kept doing it? Yeah, see, so maybe some future salespeople or some of you guys are just masochists. That's interesting. Any particular stories you guys want to share about your rejection or fails? Want to share? Loudly, please.
I had a story. I asked for a girl to borrow her bike. She said no, but I said okay, but I am searching for a bike. And so she said, okay, my father has some bike, so if you want a bike, I can give you his number. And so I called the guy, and he said, okay, you can come on Saturday to take a bike at my home, and I can give you the bike for 3 months. So
okay. What I love about this is he actually needed a bike because he's going to be here for 3 months. So he turned this exercise into actual practical use. Nice. Good work. Well done. Very smart. Any other quick stories before we'll have more opportunities, by the way, to go through this. Yeah.
Our experience was, for personally, I thought I knew if the person was going to say yes or no before I even said the question. That with the first smile, you just know if she's going to commit it or not.
Wait, are we talking about dating here, or are we talking about rejection therapy? This sounded oddly personal. But good. How many of you guys knew right away by just looking at their face? OK, so we'll talk a little bit about this. There's an enormous amount of psychology research around this that you can tell in the first split second how someone is going to respond to you, right? And that doesn't mean they're actually going to respond that way. You might have to change your tactics in order to address the fact that they're going to say no to you. But people do signal very, very strongly. And it's a very good point. We'll go through that a bit later. So this lecture today is about team building, team dynamics, and kind of going into battle with the people that you choose to go into battle with. This is a really important topic. I would say, I'm a little biased because having done several startups, the thing that I value most out of my experiences is that I have lifelong friends that I've done amazing things with, right? Taking a company from nothing to something that got sold to a larger company and now is, we defined a whole new market together. You can't replace that experience. I can say it was not easy. There was lots of times I wanted to kill people on my own team. That's a natural impulse, that you're like you get frustrated. But you learn how to work with people, and your company's success depends completely on whether you're able to do that. Okay, and it's on you. If your team fails, it's not because the other person can't get it. It's because you couldn't find a way to work with the people that you chose to work with. No one's forcing you. You are making these choices yourself, right? So you have to make them work. So we're going to talk a bit about how this all goes down in team formation. But let me just frame for you very quickly the challenge ahead of you when you start a company. It is the best metaphor that we have come up with. It's a journey. Okay, lots of people like to talk about a canvas. They like to talk about a formula. They like to talk about a business plan, like that somehow you can push all of this into one very clean way of doing things. And it's actually quite messy. And it's like any journey. It has its ups and downs. It's very personal. And you arrive at it in the way that you arrive at it. No one else is going to have the same exact journey. But the journey involves most of the same things, which you discover maybe in different orders. Team formation, ideation. Some people come up with the idea first, and they build a team. Other times, they already have a team they love to work with, and they're looking for an idea. You know, different order here. Another thing to deal with are tech issues. Code doesn't compile, or suddenly there's a new platform you need to support, or suddenly, you know, the OS that you built your app on no longer is relevant, like BlackBerry. One of my companies that we started, almost 100% BlackBerry, and we had to just completely rewrite everything when people just stopped using BlackBerries. Turns out I'm the last one. I just turned in my BlackBerry last month. That was the last one. Product market fit. Who's my customer? How are they going to pay me? Team management. Why can't we have effective meetings? Why do our meetings last 3 hours long? Why do we not have a decision made at the end of 3 hours, right? I mean, you guys are probably familiar with these things. Hiring and firing. Some of you guys may not have, you guys are young, so some of you guys may never have had a job before, which means how the hell do you know how to hire someone if you've never been hired yourself, right? Look at Mark Zuckerberg. Right? He wasn't even able to drive, or not drive, but drink by the time he was starting his company. So these are issues that we want to help you understand. You have to do a pilot. What does a pilot look like? What kind of requirements are you responsible for when you launch a product to a customer? What if it breaks? What if they're using it for something that's really important and suddenly it stops working? Right? Are you liable? Basic skills like communication, right? Presenting, sending good email. I know some of you guys have been email literate forever since you were born emailing. There's some people who are really bad at sending email, either just because they don't do it in a timely manner, which is me. I have a really bad SLA. Or sometimes people write really pointed emails. I'm not sure if you guys have ever received weird pointed emails from people thinking they were mad at you, but then you talk to them later and it turns out they're super happy. Happens all the time. You have to know how to write really good emails to potential customers and partners and employees. It's really important that you are able to communicate on multiple levels. Legal issues. You know, how do you deal with cease and desist letters, like the one I got from Apple? You know, it's actually a badge of honor to be somewhat sued by Apple, but you know, how do you handle those kinds of things? And in a cheap manner, because a lawyer costs about $500 an hour just to tell you that you got a cease and desist letter, right? Fundraising. This one everyone talks about, but this is only one of the issues you have to face. Until you get everything else handled, fundraising is not even going to happen, right? So we focus way too much on this one of these more advanced issues, but the early ones are the things you need to deal with. Accounting, taxes. If you're going to pay an employee, how are you going to handle the taxes? How are you going to handle the taxes that you need to give your contractors? They still have to pay taxes, and you still have to file. So all of these things are part of your journey to understand this is what you need to be proficient at. And I know not a single person in this room, whether you're an experienced entrepreneur or you're just a student, is proficient at every single one of these things. And even if you were, there's not enough time in one day to be able to do this for even the smallest company, right? So what this means is that you need to build a team, okay? And you need to get guidance. Even if the person isn't an employee, they're still part of your team, and I'll show you what that looks like. Your employees are on your team, obviously, right? And that includes your co-founders, people who are working day in and day out. Investors and advisors. It turns out they're part of your team too. If you look at them as your boss, you're going to fail because you're going to do exactly what they want you to do. And investors, by definition, don't have enough information to make these decisions for you. They give you guidance and they tell you what they've been hearing, but only you have all the information from spending day in and day out on this stuff. So you shouldn't be looking at them as the person you're trying to please. You're trying to inform them of what you're trying to do, okay? But they're still part of your team. The last group is your customers, or second to last group is your customers. Now, they're part of your team because they need you to succeed, okay? And you need them to succeed with your product. So whether they're a consumer or an enterprise you've sold to, you're both incented in each other's success. Obviously, if they're successful in using your product, they're going to tell everyone about it, and they're going to promote your product for you, okay? If they're not, they're going to tell everybody about it, and they're going to promote the bad news about you to everyone that they know. So it's a double-edged sword. You have to get this part right. Now, why they're incented to make sure you're successful is no company wants to buy what they call legacy software. Legacy software means it's obsolete. There's no one supporting it. If they buy your software and you die, they have no one to support the software, which means they have made an investment in something that is going to go away because no one is supporting it. This is why it's often difficult as a small company to find customers willing to take the risk, because you might not be there next year, meaning the money that they spent on you was a waste. This is a challenge. This is why they're really reluctant to buy from you. So this is really important to understand, is the relationship between you and your customers. You're in this together, okay? And the last group to think about on your team is your competitors. Turns out your competitors are teammates too. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday. But if you're the only one standing in an industry, let's say there are 10 competitors and 9 of them are dead, it may be virtually impossible for you to get VC money at that point because they're going to look at you just being the next one to die. Unless you're Facebook and you've killed everybody yourself. That's a different story. But for the most part, in most markets, your competitors are your friends too, because their existence validates your existence. I know we tell people, kids growing up, you should look at other people to validate you. That's true personally, but when it comes to corporate stuff, you definitely need other people to help validate that your market is valuable. Okay? So, but make sure you view your competitors not in a negative way. You want them to be succeeding too. Of course, not succeeding to your detriment, but that you're growing the entire market together. Okay? All right, so with that, with all of these people that you need to have on your team, the most important skill for you to have is this one. Not the look of confusion. It's actually the skill of listening. Okay? Because turns out everyone around you will tell you how they want to be treated. Your employees will tell you what's important to them and how to incent them. Your customers will tell you what features that they want and how you can keep them and how you can get more money from them. Your investors will tell you what is important to them that they'll continue to support you. Because, by the way, most companies, when they get a round of financing, they have to get extra money from that same investor to bridge them into the next round. Because it's very difficult to just do these Series A, Series B, Series C. Usually you need some extra money in between to stay alive to get to the next round. So the only person who's willing to give you that money is typically your previous investors. So you have to stay in constant communication and to be listening to them because they will be your lifeline. I don't know a single company that has not had to leverage their existing investor base to keep them alive. Okay? So listening is incredibly important. The skill, I can't tell you enough how important this is for both your business life and your personal life, right? This is something that you'll need to develop because as students, you guys have been trained actually not to listen. You guys have been trained to have an answer before I'm done speaking because that's what smart people are supposed to do. It's supposed to have an answer right away, right? And what I'm suggesting is to try to hold that back and be more in a listening mode You don't need to have the answers. You need to have others give you guidance on what those answers might be, okay? So listening is incredibly, incredibly important. So I'm going to list out some traits that are critical to a successful team, okay, that your team needs to have, the people on your team need to have. First thing, you guys need to be self-learners. Okay, you can't wait for people to hand things to you. You need to explore and to ask questions and to be proactive in the learning process. You're not only learning what works in your product, but what people will pay for. Turns out you might spend 90% of your time building 10 really cool features, and it turns out your customers are only willing to pay for one of them because that's the thing that actually they're interested in, right? So you got to be very quick at this learning stuff so that you can avoid that kind of investment in things that no one cares about. Brutal honesty and self-awareness. Okay, so most of the teams that I work with fail because they're unable to be honest with each other. They're too nice to each other. They don't want to hurt each other's feelings, so they don't say, yeah, that code is fine. Or, yeah, we can deal with that bug. Or, you know, that design's fine. We can deal with that. And it turns out that those are key issues that need to be addressed. So you have to somehow build within your team constant feedback and the ability for people to criticize each other without people taking it personally. It's very difficult. I say this theoretically, but it is important skill for your team to learn. Healthy conflict and resolution. This goes back to the previous point. If you guys can't have good conflict, then you're going to have things that seethe. People are going to be resentful. They're not going to talk about issues that everyone knows is in the middle of the room, right? So you need to work those things out and be able to constantly have positive conflict. Efficient communication. I'm not sure how many of you guys have ever been in a 3-hour meeting before, but it's the worst. Like, honestly, I hate that more than I hate getting my teeth worked on, because you're sitting there and it's a pain. And I've been responsible for many of those 3-hour meetings, so I'm going to take some responsibility for that myself. But learning how to communicate effectively is really powerful. Most people think communication is the art of speaking. Actually, communication is the art of listening. You speak a little bit, but really the biggest part of communication is listening. All right, hard work, smart work, being efficient at getting things done. Creativity in all parts of your business. Risk-taking, active listening, prioritization, and execution and attention to details. I'm going to go through these in more detail now. I talked a little bit about this self-learning and tinkering. The best teams, just going to repeat this, love insight. They're not just satisfied with, hey, we've got customers. They want to know why they have customers. And why are they paying them? And how are they paying them? Would they pay them more? Is there a profile behind the types of customers that we have? They're constantly asking questions and applying the lessons they're learning back into the system. And the most wise teams know when to ask for help and know who to ask. We talked about efficient communication, talked about honesty. There was a little bit of theory. How many people would point this out to this dude? Raise your hand. All right. So tell me how you're going to tell this dude you've been staring at his crotch for the last 30 seconds. You guys okay with that? So the next time you're at the airport and this happens to you, see if you guys say something or not. Okay. Talk about healthy resolutions, creativity in all parts of the business. All right. I don't just mean really clever products. I mean clever ways of charging your customers. Clever ways of getting customers to try your technology. Clever ways of getting work from your lawyers without having to pay them. Clever ways of doing that, trust me. You have to be creative across the board. you also have to take risks. And we talk about this constantly, right? This whole entrepreneurial experience is a risk-taking endeavor. It is actually an irrational, financially and an irrational activity to do. What you guys are doing right now to start a company, an economist would tell you is an irrational thing for you to do. With the education that you have, the most rational thing to do is to go work for an investment bank, because your abilities for a return on investment is much higher, and the risks are much lower of fail, right? But we do this for other reasons. It's not just for financial. You want to see how good you are, how much you can apply your knowledge. Can you do it? That's why I did it. I wanted to see if I could do this. And other people have different reasons, but know that it's going to require you to take these risks. Now, oftentimes these risks end up looking like this, right? You guys hear about the Zuckerbergs and the Twitter situation, all these successes, but really this is the vast majority of the situation. I'm not sure how many of you have done this before. It really doesn't feel good, right? Both metaphorically and in actuality, it doesn't feel good. All right, but you need to learn how to accept and learn from your failure, okay? When I was speaking in France last week, I talked about don't let your failures define you, right? Just because you failed does not make you a failure, okay? That's a really important point to understand. Failure is just that you have a really stark piece of information that came back to you. Something didn't work. That's all you've just found out. Now it's your responsibility to figure out what didn't work, okay? That's all that failure is. It is information that you now need to act on, okay? Talk about prioritization and rational decision making. This one's tough. When do you make a decision? How do you make that decision? Did you make that decision the right decision? How many of you guys agonize over decisions and you overthink on a decision? Raise your hands. Some of you guys are just trying to figure out if you should raise your hand or not, right? Like overthinking even that. How many of you guys just jump into action and then you think later? Raise your hand if you're like that. Okay. So some of you are like that. There's a spectrum that I see in many of my students. On one end, overthinkers, and then the other people who are underthinkers when it comes to decision making. On a team, you need both of these to balance each other out. So if your team is all overthinkers, you'll never get anything done, right? But if you guys are all underthinkers, you guys are going to be all action everywhere, and you're going to be working way too hard and not find enough patterns for your activities. So you really need to have a team that understands how to make decisions quickly and know how to prioritize. Execution is more important than strategy. A lot of people talk about how do I protect an idea from people stealing it. The best way to protect yourself from having your idea stolen is to execute faster and better than anyone else can. That's the way you protect it, is being just better and faster. It's the only way. All right? Okay, so the second part of this team formation is how do you then build a team like this, a good balanced team? Because your team is your competitive edge, right? I love this image because they are like 50 stories in the air back before they had any safety laws, clearly. Look how comfortable they are with each other, right? There's a lot of trust here. That one, they're not going to horse around and knock one person over by accident. That's one. But two, they know that if someone got in trouble, that they would all come to each other's rescue. This is the kind of team you want to build. Is this amount of comfort and trust across your team, that you know when you give something to the engineering team, they're going to get it done in time, and it's not going to be buggy, and the pilot's not going to break. And the engineering team is going to look at the other part of the team and go, they're not going to give us crap work to do that they're going to throw away next week, right? So This all works in tandem. Excuse me. So you're going to want to choose your team wisely. Excuse me. And how do you do that? Well, your team has to do many things. And apparently I have to medicate myself here. Getting over a cold. So first thing, they have to come up with an idea together, right? They need to manage the team, and they need to grow the team. And grow a team in a way they're not going to change the culture so much that no one wants to work there anymore. Okay? They have to project manage. They have to get the project forward, the product done, customers onboarded. They have to work on the UI. It's got to work cleanly. People are going to want to use the products. They have to have a roadmap on how the product is going to be developed into the future. What kind of platforms are you going to support? What happens when you have 1 million concurrent users? Right? I mean, that sounds like a lot right now, but that happens pretty quickly if you have an app that people like. Are you going to break Amazon at that point if you go too fast? Product marketing. How do you position this? What words do you use to describe your product to your customers? Do you talk about the product being faster, or do you talk about it being more convenient? Do you talk about it being slick and easy to use, or do you talk about it being very productive? These are choices you have to make around how you describe your company and your product. Customer qualification. This goes back to the previous point, which is you have to choose how you talk about it. You talk to women differently than you talk to men. You talk to the young demographic differently than you talk to the older demographic. These are words and marketing that you have to carefully figure out. Lead generation and marketing. Where are you going to find these people? Are you going to just use Google, Facebook? Are you going to proactively call people? Right? How are you going to find your customers? Business and revenue modeling. How are you going to charge them money? Are you going to charge them money? If you're going to make this ad-based, where are you going to get the advertisers? Are you going to plug into an ad network? Are you going to sell your ads yourself? Competitive analysis. Someone's got to figure out who else is in the market. Who else could possibly get in the market? Who currently, by the way, the definition of a competitor is the person who is taking the money right now from the customers that you want to sell to, that you want their money. That is a competitor. You are fighting over the same dollar. Even if your products do completely different things, but they come from the same budget, the same bucket, they are a competitor. Okay? So I see lots of companies, they pitch and say, hey, we're really different from all of the other people in this market because we have this widget, or we do it this way, or whatever. I don't care. If you're going after the same money, it's the same money, right? They're your competitor. But someone has to then figure out who they are. Also, they need to be in contact with them. Friendly conversation with them. Sales and evangelization. Someone has to go out and sell this stuff, right? Then someone has to make sure the customers stay happy after they've paid you and started using your product. You have to then deploy the system. If you have a solution that is not a consumer solution, but something that has to deploy at, say, an enterprise, someone has to be on site and implement it, or on the phone as they're loading it onto their computers. Accounting and budgeting. You want to stay out of jail. So you need someone who can do this function, or you're going to be in jail, right? This one's actually super important. Don't ignore this one, right? We want good alums in this program. All right, fundraising too. Someone has to do this function, which is constantly go out and get people to give the company money. The number one job of a CEO, it was told to me by a very smart VC, and there are some, by the way, is you never let your company run out of money. Okay? That is how a CEO fails, if he or she lets her company run out of money. So you're constantly fundraising. Now, look at all of these functions that a team has to do, right? And so diversity becomes an act of survival. If all of those different things you need to do are critical, diversity is key. So I love this sport because I find it so funny. Because I'm not sure if you guys know how rowing works, but you have these like a bunch of like freakishly tall people being yelled at by a freakishly small person. It's just a fascinating sport, right? But you need that diversity in order to win, right? And that's the same thing for what you're doing. You need to have that diversity, right? We tend to seek affinity groups, people who are just like us, because they make us feel comfortable and they validate us by saying, oh, we're just like you, right? Avoid that. Find people who are extremely capable, different, but that you can work with, right? I don't mean someone who's super different and they're a pain in the ass and you can't work with them. But find diverse people who you can rationally have really good conflict with and then come to a resolution, okay? VCs often will tell you that they invest in teams. That is somewhat true. I know some VCs who they are on record as saying that, and you can see some of their investments absolutely true. They invested in the team without even having an idea, and the team was successful at finding an idea. But that is rare. Usually this is what happens. They won't say it this way, but this is what happens. Think of it this way. If you're rafting down a river, the people in the raft are your team. They're the ones who are controlling kind of where things are going. The product is your raft. The market is the river. Now, if your team is not paddling all in the right direction together, heading in the right direction away from Niagara Falls, then you replace the team pretty quickly because no one wants to go off Niagara Falls, okay? If you find out there's a hole in the boat, right, the product, you can either patch it up or you can replace the product. You can replace the raft. If there's no water in the market, you can't just conjure up a whole river out of nowhere, right? So a VC first really looks to see, hey, is this market growing? Is this huge topic happening? Like, it used to be mobile, but now it's Internet of Things, wearables, big data, which no one actually knows what big data actually is. But it's a big thing that people are all excited about, right? So they're looking for these topics that they know are growing. And then they look for people who are, I think one of the models that Iklak talked about is finding experts, going around and looking for experts who are the connector model, right? Looking for people who are experts in it to see who you might want to put into a raft, right? So this is what they're looking for, okay? But they all need to start working together and fuse together well to come up with a really good story. We talked about storytelling before. But you need to fuse all of these things together. Now, where do these teams form? Right here, right, at UC Berkeley. Oftentimes in labs, right? They just pop up. This is another model, which we call research-centric, which happens when there's a discovery by a scientist or a researcher, and someone says, you know, that should be a company. We have a long history of that at Berkeley. If you're familiar with, Cadence, Marvell, Synopsys. We have a lot of semiconductor and hardware companies that emerge out of that kind of research. And so this is one way that it comes out. Another is like this class. It's competitions, hackathons, courses, where you guys meet each other and you start seeing, wow, I could really work with this person, right? Oh, wow, this guy has a really great idea, or she's great at execution or project management, or has some skill that I don't have. The more that you guys collide in with each other and get to know each other, this is why that grouping exercise, we did that. We wanted you guys to meet each other. Even if you already have a solid team, it's always great to see new people you might be able to bring on. It expands your network so that more companies can emerge. So if you haven't met 20 people by the end of this week, I would say this was not a success for you. because those 20 people could be the key to unlocking some of the challenges you have, from fundraising to building your product to selling your product. I mean, look at the rejection therapies. There's some natural salespeople in here, right? You need to meet as many people as possible, and more importantly, they need to know about you, because they might also become a potential customer today or in the future. So I talk about diversity, but let me unpack this a little bit. There's different ways to look at team diversity, okay? I look at it either in business function, roles, or in dynamic. Let's talk about business function, okay? In every team, there's someone who has to do business planning and data analysis, oftentimes the strategic thinker, okay? Don't overload yourself with strategic thinkers. They don't like to do anything other than strategically think, typically. So you want this function done, but it shouldn't be someone that's only going to do that. You're too small of a team. But this function needs to be done. Designer, someone needs to create the experience for your product. Not just your design, not just the UX, right? The UI. It has to also be the UX. What does the packaging look like? What does the messaging look like? What are the colors that are going to be used, right? It's very important to have this person who thinks this way. Another, of course, is the builder, the people who are going to actually build the product. And then you need, of course, someone who can develop the market for you, the person who's going to sell. And then the last person, I like to call the nanny, the person who everybody respects and listens to and will show up at meetings when that person calls them. This one's tough. I'm very not good at this one, right? Because this one has to be regimented, on time, getting things done. I was really good at getting people to do things for them without having them hate them. That's a really tough skill. If you're that person, raise your hand if you think you're a project manager. Okay, we have got lots of project managers in here. That's a tough role. So if you need someone who's a nanny, go talk to these people, because they will keep your projects in line. Now, another way to look at roles of diversity is, you guys are way too young for this slide, so I'm going to explain this just a little bit. This is the village people, and they're the epitome of diversity. Let's just put it that way. And it's Legos. Since this is the engineering school, I thought you would appreciate that homage. But roles that you have to play. One is you have to be the idea guy. Someone has to be the dreamer who has a huge vision for where your project can go, where your company can go. I see in 5 years, we are going to dominate this huge new market. Okay? And for those of you who are not American, it is okay to say things like that. In America, we say things like that just all the time because we're just overconfident people. Seriously, we are. I mean, we have, and actually there's a professor in the business school, his entire research topic is on overconfidence. Only in America are there professors who focus on overconfidence, right? But that's a thing here. It is something that you need to start practicing, is to be okay by saying, I think we're going to be huge. It is okay to say that, right? To aspire to that. We actually appreciate that. And we know back home you might be judged for being that audacious. But here we expect you to think big, because why would any of us invest any of our time working on something that's going to be a $2 million company? We want to be a part of your success. All the mentors who have come here, they want to see you guys become huge successes, right? So you need to start seeing yourself as successes as well. Envision it. The second role that needs to be played is the communicator, and this is a political role. Turns out, if you guys look at LinkedIn, for product managers, many of them are not engineers by training. Many of them were political science majors in college. Take a look. You'll see. Lots of them were humanities and political science majors. And that, I don't think, is an accident, because the role of a product manager is often to play this role of trying to make sure everything is communicated across and that everyone is okay with the decision. Okay? Then you need the peacemaker, the person who makes sure everyone comes back together after a conflict. Okay? Then you need someone I call the detective, the person who goes and finds all the things that can be wrong. Okay, how many of you are like that person? Oh, I know the French. There's got to be, like, all the French people should raise your hands. This is one of the most important roles in your company. This person will help you save money by not making bad decisions because you didn't know it was there. This is incredibly important. Now, if this person isn't kept in check, all you have is a bunch of people complaining. So you need this role, but not too much. Then you need the person, guys, I'm not sure if you're familiar with MacGyver. That dude fixes everything. You need someone who can fix everything, right? It turns out sometimes this is the same person, right? Be careful with that, because sometimes that person loves to create problems that they can solve, which is kind of, that's kind of like my role. But you really do need to find this balance between the two. Then you need the ninja. This is the person, no matter what the project, you just hand it to them and they'll figure it out, right? They just get it done. Oftentimes you don't want to ask them how they got it done. Plausible deniability is nice sometimes, right? But this person really is important. I got to tell you, I've gotten out of a lot of tight spots because of having someone who can pull this off. Then comes my favorite roles here. There's the balloon popper. This is the person, you ask them, hey, I'm going to give you 1 minute. Tell me everything that is wrong with this product. And then they come up with over 200 issues with the product. They pop every balloon, because what happens is everyone gets so excited. Hey, this is going to be great. We're going to add this new feature that's going to do all this great stuff, right? And you get into this groupthink to say, everyone, oh, like, this is going to be awesome. And then when you launch it, no one's using it. And you're like, what happened? Why is there a problem? Well, the person who's a balloon popper can go in and just pop all of the issues that are there. And if that person can't find something wrong with your idea, then you probably have a pretty good, solid idea. So finding this person is really good too. I see French people smiling. It's like, you guys, like, there's jobs. I kid the French. I spent the last week teaching in France, so we're close. And then here's my favorite role. Yes, the puppy shooter. Why this role is important. Okay, we all fall in love with features in a product. I love the way this button looks and how it clicks and that it's so easy and simple. But then you realize it's cluttered. There's so many buttons and stuff. The person who's really good here is the person who says, we need to kill that. It's not going to work. Right? Is the person who's not affected emotionally by, oh, look how pretty this is. It needs to, like, be great. And so I did this presentation in front of a bunch of German students about 2 years ago. And I've been making fun of the French. I'll make fun of the Germans now. And one guy in front, I'm trying to explain this concept. And the one guy in front, he raises his hand. He goes, why shoots the puppy when you can just strangle it? And I'm like, you're missing. Yeah. So the point here is someone needs to be able to do that. Because apparently in Germany, it's not a thing, because everyone shoots the puppy, I guess, or strangles it. The last way to look at this is through team dynamics. Okay? Most of you guys don't know how to drive stick shift. Oh, the Europeans probably do, because you guys have awesome cars. But in a team, you are going really fast. Someone has to accelerate. This is the person who's like, go, go, go. We need to build. We need to sell. We need to go out there, right? This person, you know these people. You might be these people. It's constant motion and anxiety and drive. But then you also need someone who plays the brake, who says, we got to stop. We got to stop. We got to fix this thing. We got to be more measured here. We've got to focus on cleaning things up. But then you also have this third role, which is the clutch. And for those who don't know how to drive a stick, you need a clutch to change gears from fast, slow, to stop. And this person is incredibly important because this person helps modulate the team to know when to go fast and when to slow down. Okay? Teams that are all accelerators die within a year because they crash into walls, probably literally, right? Teams that are all brakes, they don't get past the ideation stage, right? Everything is a problem. And I've never seen a team that's all clutches, although no, I've not seen one. But you need to have a clutch, but you don't want to have too much of any of these. You want to balance, okay? And your team, you'll know, and you'll want to interview the people on your team. Hey, in these kinds of scenarios, are you the accelerator or are you the clutch, right, or the brake? But do these assessments. Now, in this assessment, where you want to begin is with you. What are you? Are you a puppy shooter? Right? Are you a balloon popper? Are you an accelerator? Are you a brake? Do this assessment. Spend time with yourself, like she is, in front of a mirror, and figuring out what it is, where your strengths are, right? Nothing is bad. This is not, we're not looking, there's no role that's the right role. Only the role that's right for you, that you're going to be comfortable with. Because you're going to be doing this for 5 to 7 years, right? So really understand what it is that you are here. What is your strengths and what is your personality type? And then, in this self-evaluation, you also want to talk about your weaknesses. You need to understand what you're not good at. What do you not like to do? It's painful if the next 5 to 7 years you're going to be doing something you hate to do. I'll give you an example. I hate accounting, but I want to stay out of jail. So I got a really good accountant that he does everything for me, both personal finances and business finances. And now I'm happy because I don't have to do it, right? So understand what it is that you need balance in. Also, figure out what your personality quirks are. This is really important to understand, hey, I have this kind of quirk. Because people need to know that because they're going to have to live with that too, right? Think about this. You're going to be spending, if you move forward on your project, the next 5 to 7 years, upwards of 80 to 100 hours a week with the same people in probably a cube that could only house one person. There's probably 4 of you. At least for the first couple of years, right? You're going to have to get to know each other really well, know what triggers each other's anxiety and issues and frustrations, and learn how to work with each other, right? Where that starts is understanding where those are for you. And ultimately, what is your risk profile? Are you really a risk taker, or are you more measured? It's okay. You're on a spectrum, but understand that. Now, this is advice for everyone, but especially those who are more risk averse than risk takers, is have a red line. And I have a financial red line, but some people have a time red line, which is when my savings gets to a certain point, I stop doing the startup and I go look for a job. That, it's just a number. And so I plan a couple months ahead that I need to know if I'm starting to approach this red line, I need to do something before I hit it. So go do an assessment on what your red line is and hold to it. Because that's your sanity line. You're making that decision now before you're at a point where you're like, wow, if we just do it one more month, we might be able to get enough customers. Well, you might also not be able to make rent, right? So make that red line while you're having a rational thought today. All right, I think this is the last couple slides, and this is as a shout out to our global friends who find this a sport. Your teams need to be balanced all the way across. So when you looked at that business function, your team should have all of those things balanced out. By roles, that should be balanced out as well, and with dynamics. I can guarantee you your teams right now aren't balanced this way yet, right? But once you get that balance, you can move very, very quickly, and you can grow very quickly, okay? This is something you want to aspire to, okay? So ultimately, choose your team wisely. Don't choose them just because they are agreeable. That's a danger. It means you guys are all sharing the same thought. So why are you paying two people to have the same thought, right? Find smart people you can disagree with, but then ultimately come together on a resolution. You want to discuss each other's strengths and weaknesses at the beginning. Talk about them openly to establish trust and openness. Find others who complement you. Set ground rules. I love having, in my previous teams I've done this, having a set aside 30 minutes a week where we talk about problems. That means that we don't have to talk about problems in the other meetings, right? We can say this isn't time for us to just bitch and moan about what's going on, and then no more of that in the other meetings. So come up with your own tools and tactics. Right now that you've heard from yesterday, you need to create your own tools. If you want a healthy team, create your own tools to manage them. Have clear delineated roles and functions. It doesn't mean one person's just the finance guy and they handle everything in finance. Sometimes that works, but it may just be, hey, Bob, you are responsible for doing accounts receivable. Mary, you're responsible for accounts payable, right? But be clear who's doing what function, so that there's no dropping of responsibilities. Set achievable goals and talk about those goals constantly with your team to make sure that you guys know each other's goals and that the company has one clear goal that everyone shares. And cannot stress this enough. Create regular check-ins. Do things together. That's not just about the company. So on Fridays, we used to have beer bus. And as team building exercises, we used to volunteer at a women's shelter, which sounds weird, except for it's awesome that at the end you feel like you've done something really good, and the team gets stronger for doing that. So you need to take care of your team like you are taking care of anything of value, which is constantly put effort into it. All right, so that's it. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.